What's good, y'all, and welcome to another vid. It's Solcadens time. So, exactly 4 days ago, Solcadens has been given a rework. So, number one, we're going to be going over what changed with Solcadens. Number two, we're going to be going over the impact of that, be it a nerf, buff, and the like. Number three, I'll show you how to gear Solcadens. And number four, we take him for a spin in Abyss 1. So that's the plan for today.
Our research begins.
So, straight into Solcadens' skills, and here's already the first thing that's confusing, that it says Lord skill adjustment, but you're not going to find it in the Lord skill, you're going to find it in the ultimate, and then by clicking on the Pyro Blitz right here, which then brings up the first change, and that is before it says, when deployed as the Lord, ultimate orders all faction team members to join focus fire, and he gains 70% attack and 80% crit damage from these heroes. This has now been changed to Pyro Blitz. 2 faction team members with the highest attack join forces to channel energy to the Lord regardless of their location. The Lord gains each participating faction member's current 50% attack and 60% crit damage. So something that also seems weird is like, oh, okay, we're going from like the whole team now to 2 DPS. It always only took the stats from DPSs, so that's something that wasn't mentioned in the description before. And also I think it capped out at 70 and 80% attack, but now he's going to get 50% attack as well as 60% attack from the total amounts respectively of those heroes. So even though it reads weird, the only thing you have to take away from this is that overall it's a buff. So Solcadens is now getting more stats and a even bigger benefit. So who are, for example, heroes that really work well with Solcadens? One of those would have to be Lord Phineas. So what Lord Phineas does is he has this beautiful talent where every time a hero ults, he gains extra crit damage, and also he grants extra crit damage to units when they ult. And then this ultimate right here. So overall, he's getting a 50% attack increase when he ults, and also when allies use their ult, he gains more crit damage. Which means overall, he can stack this Viscount's Flame, giving him up to 5 times 25. So a 125% crit damage increase, as well as a 50% attack increase. And those stats can then be used to further improve Solcadens. So units out of the Inferno faction that increase their own stats are something that is very much desired, though there isn't a lot of those units, but there is already this perfect synergy between him and Lord Phineas. Then you have like other units that in general just have higher stats, like for example then other units like Setram, or here Setram also having the ability to give himself extra crit damage through Annihilation. So overall, the 2 strongest faction members are going to work towards improving the stats of your Solcadens, making them even stronger. And that's just the first point. Next up, we have so ultimate change. Before they said, okay, we're gonna add like 4 extra seconds to the ultimate. Now overall, I think it went from a 10 to a 12 second duration, and that is, his ultimate takes exactly 12 seconds, and upon activation the talent effect increases damage by 11% for 12 seconds instead. So what you're going to get is, rather than a 6% times 10 or a 60% attack increase throughout his talent, you're now getting a 110% attack increase that you didn't get before, as well as the fact that this buff from the 50% attack and the 60% crit damage, it ended after Solcadens threw his big boy meteor. It ended, and now it's going the whole duration, the full 12 seconds. And the importance of that is that you have Synergy Blaze. Synergy Blaze is a passive where every time he inflicts burn, there's a 20% chance to gain a Fury Essence, which is kind of like a fire shard meteor type that swirls behind a Solcadens, and if you then use the ultimate, every essence behind Solcadens deals an extra 80% damage, and that is now also further getting improved by the extra attack, by the extra crit damage, which wasn't the case before. And then another increase is under Pyroblitz down here. Furthermore, nearby units will also be affected, suffering 300% splash damage. That was 100% before, bringing us to the very last change, and that is here. When Solcadens casts Hell Breaks Loose, all faction team members gain a penetration increase. So ignore 30% of defense and magic res, and the 30% extra damage to elites and bosses for 15 seconds, which was a 10-second increase before. And then lastly, we have the improvement to Hellfire Emperor, where before he had a maximum of a 30% chance to increase the burning damage taken by targets after inflicting them with burns, and that has now been increased by 33% to a 40% chance, meaning that overall over 1 in 3 burns trigger this increased damage through burn debuff. So it's a separate debuff that looks like a flame and then has an arrow up, and that indicates that burns now do 30% more damage. So now that we have all these skills out of the way, now that we know how it works, what you need to take away from this is Solcadens' ultimate became less bursty but more powerful. His meteor is still his strongest single target instance of damage, but even after he throws his meteor, he can still do a significant amount of damage with his laser through his hand, and also the extra synergy blazes right here. Outside of his ultimate, his power was also increased through the addition of the 10% extra burn damage increase debuff chance. And then outside of that, you also have the increased help for teammates by increasing the penetration, or increasing the duration of penetration and extra damage increase. So that's all that has changed with Solcadens, really. If you had to put it into words, it's probably between a 10 to 20% increase to Solcadens' power overall. I think that's kind of how you have to judge it. It's not the biggest of reworks, but it also isn't something that makes him broken to the point of ruining the game, because he was already very good before and now he's just very better. So yeah, now that we have this out of the way, let's talk briefly about Solcadens' gear, the way you want to work with him, and the like. So first off, let's have a quick look at his attack stat, or better said, his attack speed stat. You can see we have him up to a 484 attack speed, which puts it down to a 1 second attack interval. And it's not really relevant, but the higher your attack speed, the more basic attacks or more instances of continuous damage he obviously fires. So more attack speed is better. But let's start from the beginning, and that is right side gear. Honestly, right side gear, there's only 3 relevant gear sets. Let's go over them in order of strength, which would be Wicked Vengeance first, Warlord after, and then followed by Calamity and Annihilating Might. So depending on what kind of sets you have, these is kind of like the order you want to prioritize them, but also only if you're talking about equal substats. If your Wicked Vengeance set is, for example, attack percent and crit rate, and your Warlord set is attack percent, crit rate, crit damage, then Warlord obviously has the advantage. One of the reasons why the Wicked Vengeance set is so good is because you have the ability to find pieces like this that not only grant attack bonus, attack speed, crit rate, and crit damage, but overall also the Wicked Vengeance set effect not only gives 40% crit damage, but also an additional 10% crit rate. So yeah, those are the sets. This is the way you want to build them. Obviously, if you cannot afford the extra attack speed, it is still better to go for attack percent, crit rate, crit damage, rather than attack percent, crit rate, attack speed. Same goes for the chest piece. So depending on what you have, you're going to build him differently. And then on the right side, what we have right here is pretty much a fully Abyss 2 or Abyss 1 focus build, which means we're going for as much attack as possible, because not only are we getting crit damage from Lord Phineas later down the line, but also the defenses of this boss are so high that we would rather increase our attack to deal more damage, and also deal more damage while inspiration isn't active, meaning overall throughout the duration of the fight, again, more damage. Stat wise, it's rather simple. It's preferably triple attack if you're taking on something like Abyss 1, Abyss 1 or Guild Boss 2, or even something like a double attack, one piece of crit damage main set is also totally fine, especially if you're running a Warlord set. If you're running a Warlord set, swap one of those pieces out for Stubborn Arcana, crit damage, and then let's say flat attack for something like this. Or it doesn't even have to have flat attack, it could also be without. So yeah, substat wise, it's pretty much the same as usual. So you want on your piece at minimum these 4 stats, which are going to be attack percent, crit rate, crit damage, and attack speed. And then depending on use case and whatnot, you have pretty much 3 premier choices. Number 1, HP percent, because your Solcadens has to survive. He's too squishy, he's getting hit by too much AoE, he ends up dying. That's when you want to introduce more HP percent. When you just want to get like the slightest edge and just raw damage, that's when you're going to be looking for more flat attack. And if you have specific timings that you really want to get, but they don't end up working out for your Solcadens for whatever reason, then you can add in additional rage regen. But Solcadens ultimate is pretty fast, it's back pretty quick. So that's why we're running him with exactly 0% rage regen. And now for the artifact, there's only really 2 choices. Realistically, for the endgame player, only 1. But that is either the Tear of Twilight, you could say 3. But it's either the Tear of Twilight, the White Tower Trinket if you can't yet afford a Tear of Twilight, where you also get an advantage if you place him without adjacent allies. And then for the final artifact, if you're not yet at a Tower Trinket at 25, that is obviously Keen Wisdom, because that is pretty much just the strongest line of mage artifacts, and also he doesn't have an exclusive, and it is the best to also increase single target damage, because otherwise you have something that increases AoE damage, crit damage, stacking crit damage, Heaven's Rage. The reason why Heaven's Rage isn't that great is because Heaven's Rage stacks a stat which you could also get through gear, and also it doesn't really do it all that well. So yeah, that is Solcadens, that is everything you need to know about him. So let's end this one on a Abyss 1 run. Alright, so Abyss 1, this is the team we'll be going with, consisting of Raiga, Volker, Wukong, Kigiri, and Constance in the top. You could also be taking out Raiga for Torador. Yeah, and then second team we have Lord Phineas, as well as Solcadens, Lyra, Percy, and Aelin. Awakening wise, everybody's a 0 outside of Kigiri being a 3, Volker naturally being a 5, and Solcadens being a 1, because Solcadens' A1 is just that powerful. Alright, so time for the fight. I'll be placing the units down, then explaining the reason why. Because it is still rather tight timing, and yeah, I don't think I can explain and do all that at the same time, which is why I want to get our units in first and then tell you the reason why we did what we did. So Kigiri first, Constance after, to provide him with the extra 12% attack increase, as well as Kigiri is the unit who needs the most rage, who has the tightest margin, and that's why we place him first. So not only can he get the 1% rage per attack through A1, but he can also get, or I think it's the 0.5% rage per attack through A1. It doesn't sound like much, but it helps. But he can also get the extra attack from just attacking through rage regen gained upon attacking. Next up we have Wukong. Wukong's facing backwards, so that if we had an A1 Wukong, which we don't, his monkey business would be the most effective. It doesn't affect his clones, it doesn't make him deal less damage, it just captures more enemies, specifically Raiga, because Raiga is someone who's very prone to dying on the second magic shield, or the 27 million one, and that's something we don't really want, so that's why we face Wukong downwards. Right here for Drake's Bellow we use Solcadens as well as trigger Kigiri. We are triggering Kigiri right here, and the reason why he needs to be ready is so that we can start stacking up Ember Strikes to use his A3 to make him the most powerful he could be, and also we're going to be using Wukong just to kind of like get in some more damage. So Storm Surge, none of our ultimates are going to be ready before the stun, but after the stun we can just use our Infernal ultimates to stack Lord Phineas's buff. And here for Drake's Bellow we can already go in with Raiga's ultimate, because it is rather long at 25 seconds, so we should still be able to take full advantage of it for most of the vulnerability phase 2. If not, either you have him awakened so you can do it a bit earlier, or you just wait for Wyrm's Wrath right here, which is what we're going to be doing. Then we get the meteors to come down, trigger constants, and then you could say basically spam Kigiri, because the trigger is once again pretty much upon the shield popping, so we should have gotten out another Ember Strike, and also we're hitting the shield, so overall I consider that a win. Yeah, you can see we have still 6 seconds left. I think the vulnerability might run out at almost the same time as... Yeah, so we could have triggered him a bit later, but I think it's timed pretty well with the increase and the vulnerabilities and all the ultimates again not being ready anyway. So now the special thing that we're going to do with Solcadens is we will have a look at Wukong. So when Wukong's ultimate reaches around 90%, which is right here, we're going to be triggering his ultimate, because I know that my Wukong is not going to be able to trigger his ultimate in time before the promotion. And that is important because as soon as this banner pops up, the dragon is going to be promoted. He has already changed phases, he has already changed vulnerabilities, meaning that currently he's, rather than being vulnerable to physical, even though he's still purple, he's already vulnerable to magic damage, and that's why we're using Solcadens' ultimate, getting in an extra hit, overall giving us more damage, and triggering Kigiri here to once again get in another nice ultimate, allowing him to not only charge his ultimate so he's ready for the next shield, but also again build upon that A3. So for Drake's Bellow here, we are still somewhat fine, but then we're gonna use Aelin to just pretty much top up everyone health-wise, so that we survive the Seismic Slam, which we at least do, which is great. And then we gotta kind of keep Fercy's ultimate to ensure that Raiga survives the shield right here. So, Drake's Bellow, we don't really have to worry about anything because Aelin's ultimate is still active. Kigiri's ultimate is ready before the meteors. So now for Meteoric Deluge, we have to do a couple things. And those are, number one, we want to activate Kigiri's ultimate so that the meteors don't squash him. We can activate constants, and as soon as the first meteor hits Raiga, it's just a Raiga problem. That's when we want to activate Fercy so that we can heal Raiga in between these meteor hits, as you've seen right here, allowing Raiga to not die from the meteors. You see it's like barely, but he's alive, so that's great. Yeah, I mean, Raiga, it's Raiga timings, alright? And outside of that, we can then already start up Phineas, Solcadens, and we are triggering Lyra as soon as basically the glowing fireball from Solcadens is shot, because we're, at least for the moment, locked out of our ultimates. And then we have to pay attention to, number one, the vulnerability, because as soon as it disappears, we want to trigger Volca. And then after that, yeah, we don't really have to do anything much more than hold out for the vulnerabilities. Because again, here we're going to wait for the phase transfer. Again, kind of like the dragon starting to roar. which happens around here. We can trigger both ultimates again, triggering Kigiri, giving us again Ember Strike stacks, already getting in extra damage because he's already face swapped. And yeah, now it's just all about us getting through here successfully. So before the Drake's Bellow actually hits, we trigger Aelin so that we can heal everyone back up. For the Storm Surge, we should be fine. It kind of depends on like the slightest bit of like healing timing, but as you can see, we are still very much alive. For Drake's Bellow, we're going to hold on Fercy's ultimate again to kind of like ensure that Ryger survives. You could also trigger it here if your healing isn't strong enough. So Drake's Bellow has happened, which means we can use Ryger. Here, rather than hold off on Solcadens' ultimate to trigger it again upon the face swap, what we're doing this time is actually, once again, wait for these meteors to come down, trigger Fercy to heal up our Rygerino, then obviously give us the attack increase. But we'll be waiting and just using the vulnerabilities because we're gonna need it against the shield. So shield pots up means you're gonna trigger Wukong, and then this bar, I call it like 80%, but it's probably more realistically like 90%, which is around here. That's when you want to trigger Kigiri, because here at this point is the damage instance, meaning that again we stack another Ember Strike. More Ember Strikes, more good, more damage. So yeah, there you go. And as soon as the vulnerability runs out from Solcadens, that's when we can introduce Volker's vulnerability. You could also hold off on Solcadens' ultimate right here, and rather than that, trigger give Volker some more increased rage regen, allowing you to trigger our ultimate here a bit earlier. But yeah, that's the way we're doing it. And here we might even, not quite. We're not quite getting some extra monkey hits in. But we are going to be spamming Kigiri's ultimate in preparation for, again, this Raw, giving us another Ember Strikes. You know, you get the deal, right? So Drake's Bellow. And then Aelin. Here we are pretty much accepting the fact that we're probably either not going to make it past the shield, or we're not going to be able to keep Ryger alive through it. So rather than that, we're probably going to have to, let's see, Seismic Slam kills everybody. Unfortunate. We lost Phineas, which is understandable. We lost Volker, which is unlucky. Do we change anything? I mean, we'll just see how much damage we end up dealing anyway, just in case. But yeah, we did at least manage to get the 22k chest, and I don't think, at least with our current awakenings, the 35k chest would have been a possibility anyway. You could have triggered the ultimates earlier here to give yourself some extra blood, but here we're just gonna hold out until the shield. So kind of like the same thing. We wait for the meteors to come in. You see, we lost not only Kigiri, but Ryger too. And Constance. That's great. So we're probably not gonna down the shield. So what could have been done differently to avoid this happening, or what does it take for you to then now get past this shield? So interestingly enough, damage wise, you don't have to change anything. The only real issue really does come down to survivability. One of those that would be incredibly useful and that you probably can't even really get around is getting Aelin to A3, because that would allow Aelin's range to, for example, hit Phineas. Or you could change up the team a bit, and that is by taking out Ryger for a Torador, swapping Phineas's with Wukong's placement, swapping Wukong with Volker's placement, and then finally swapping Volker with Phineas's placement. Meaning that even though your Aelin doesn't heal her, Volker is then still able to heal herself, while you then provide HP percent geared to Volker. So that would have then allowed you to, for example, proceed up to here, And also then obviously a different like Percy timing. But overall, the main takeaways from this are still, as great as the Solcadens rework is, it's still, number one, this is not a one-man fight. Number two, uh, it's really hard, right? Just a single hero upgrade doesn't help you, because damage is only one aspect. Survivability, you have to like kind of check off survivability first before you can even worry about the damage part of this. And yeah, I mean, there's a couple of swaps here and there and whatnot, but it is a viable way to get like a 22k chest, even if all your units were to die there. So let's get to the Solcadens conclusion. So it's obviously a rather frustrating video, way to end this video, but overall, that is just Abyss 1 for you, at least currently at the moment with the way everything is. It is just a rather frustrating fight, but the reason why Solcadens is so great is you'll just see him in pretty much every top team, right? Obviously in Abyss 1, Solcadens is also going to perform extremely well. You don't have to hold back on his ultimates. The Inferno faction in general is very, very popular, has only been getting stronger over time with them adding in new heroes and such. So keep in mind, if you are using Solcadens, bring 2 allies. That is the main takeaway. That is what you should keep in mind. If you are using Solcadens, make sure you bring 2 damage dealing allies, or his damage potential isn't going to be fully realized. What should you take away from this video? It wasn't a nerf as initially expected, but it also isn't a game-breaking buff. You can expect your Solcadens to be between like 10 to 15% stronger in most cases, in most scenarios. Make that 20% if you play everything properly. And overall, Solcadens is a strong hero. He has a lot of usability, and it's just a nice addition in making him better. And it does alleviate some of the pressure when it comes to getting higher scores in Abyss 1. So yeah, that's the Solcadens rework for you. Honestly, the most tips I can give you is, I mean, where do you use them outside of Abyss 1, right? You can use him in Abyss 1, you can use him in Nightmare 4, he's going to perform. He's going to be able to do nice amounts of damage in Guild Boss 2 also, but outside of that, maybe you could say the Immortal Codex Boreas, because he has all those burns and those count as DOTs, meaning that he's quite efficient there. You could, outside of that, I mean, it's a single target mage, right? It's kind of the same single target mage problem you have with everyone, but he is a faction lord, so as long as you can find a use for any Inferno unit, Solcadens is going to make them stronger, but it does have the caveat, for full effect you have to place him down. So most of the time it's either going to be, for example, the Inferno faction trial right here, or something like Void Rift. Void Rift Epilogue, he's pretty effective, but more like Void Rift campaign, and overall more like one time and done stuff focus rather than like the big stuff. So yeah, that's Solcadens over. I think it's a nice rework. They didn't break the game, they didn't make him too strong, they didn't weaken him, and it's just easier to build a team with him. So